Hello, welcome back to the Python Programming in ArcGIS video series for Geog 453 and 651. We finished up the last week's set of videos with expressions and simple statements with this idea that those are the phrases and sentences of our Python language. However, just as in writing, you sometimes can want and use simple sentences, but sometimes when you want to make a more powerful or a more in-depth point to communicate more complex ideas, you use complex sentences. We have basically the same idea in Python or any programming language of complex statements. We are going to have two of those in the two main categories of complex statements, especially in Python: the conditional statement and the loop. We're starting here looking at conditional statements. In Python, there is one kind of conditional statement. Some other languages have other kinds, but we won't worry about them. We're just focused here on what Python has. And that would be if-then-else statement. And with this video, just to be clear, I'll look at the logic behind this kind of statement. We'll actually, in one of the later videos, the third one of the week, look at the syntax of if-then-else statements. Where, just to set out the scene, the first video will be if-then conditional statements, the concepts or the logic. The second video of the week will be the logic behind loops. And the third video will be how the computer reads these kind of statements. So looking at the syntax and grammar of these statements. So the conditional statement, just by this terminology, you can get a pretty good sense probably of what it's going to be doing. But I'll illustrate here. We have situations where we will want to have the computer make a decision and act based upon that decision. So I'll have a flow chart. And as an example, let's say we are trying to find the location for a coffee shop. Okay, there are many decisions that you would make based upon, to decide where to put the coffee shop, to decide if one place is acceptable or some other place isn't. We can use if-then statements to help identify suitable locations or whether or not a particular site is suitable. I will show this out with some flowcharts. Each of the conditional statements here, our if-then-else statement, starts with basically a question, an expression that evaluates to a Boolean value, to use the terminology from last week. So we might say, we want our coffee shop to attract a lot of business customers during the work week. We want it to be in the central business district. So we can say if it is in the CBD. Is it in the central business district or not? That's true or false, that is Boolean. and we have two options. Always we have two options. If it is true and if it is false. In the logic that is often used within computer science, we have this if-then-else phrasing. The if refers to the Boolean expression. If it is true, if it is false. The then represents what do you do when it's true. Else represents what do you do if it's false. So if it is true, if we have a site in the central business district, we might then want to have a second conditional statement, illustrating we can have these nested within each other. We don't have to just have one and then another and then another. They can actually be within each other. So it might be where it doesn't have to be any place in the central business district. We want to narrow that down. So say, okay, we've calculated our expected monthly sales to be, say, $10,000. Well, that means to make sure we have the ability to pay the supplies, to pay the employees, to buy everything we need, we might want to say if the rent for a particular location must be less than $4,000 a month. Otherwise, we won't be able to afford it and we'll have to close. So here's another if statement. And we can say if it's true. So and we're in the central business district, we can afford the rent. Then we want to get that storefront. So we have found a suitable location, we take the action of buying or renting that place. If it's false, we look other places. Now, conceptually, this works as what we would want. If it is in the right location, if we can afford it, go for it. In Python and in most programming languages, the else part, what do we do if it is false? We don't actually have to do anything there. So we may not be saying explicitly, okay, now check elsewhere. So we may get rid of that. And throughout, in any programming, in reality, our statements like this, our conditional statements and everything, is going to be embedded in a longer, larger script or program. So what happens is, really, once everything is done, we just move on to the next part of the code, the next line. If we specify something, we might, for example, if the listed rent is close, if it is, especially if it's say a little over 4,000, we can say if it's over 4,000, we might be able to negotiate and see if they'll change the price. And so we do have an action corresponding to the else clause, or the what do we do if it's false. If it's outside the central business district, we don't care. We move on to the next one. So this flowchart shows the different parts of the logic behind a conditional statement. To recap, it starts with the condition, the if statement that is evaluating a Boolean expression. Then, if that expression is true, we will have one or more statements. They can themselves, as we see here, they can themselves be complex statements inside that then clause. If it is false instead, we sometimes just move on, or we have other statements that we work with if it is false, and once those are done, then we move on. So that has been conditional statements. The next video will look at the logic and the flowchart behind loops, and how those work within Python. As I said, the third video will look at how Python actually has the syntax and grammar for both kinds of complex statements. So again, thanks for watching. I hope everybody is staying safe, and I'll see you at the next video. Bye.